You're listening to Maryland deploys more law enforcement to Baltimore amid Trump's threats to send troops. A news story written by Dana Monroe and Aaron Cox and read by an AI-generated voice. With President Donald Trump's threat to send National Guard troops into Baltimore in the air, Maryland leaders said Friday that they will pour more of their own resources to further bring down crime in the state's largest city. The open-ended increase in public safety efforts announced by Governor Wes Moore, Democrat, and Mayor Brandon Scott, Democrat, builds on an existing partnership that has already funneled cash to violence interrupter groups and state prosecutors, an effort that the two men credit with helping drive Baltimore's homicide count to its lowest in 50 years. "We can do this ourselves," Scott said Friday evening at a joint news conference with the governor outside St. John's Evangelical Lutheran Church. "We do not need an occupation. We do not need troops on our streets." He called the city's population a resource to be invested in, not a problem to be solved. Trump has characterized Baltimore as a hellhole and pointed to the city, along with Chicago and New Orleans, as a place he may want to replicate his intervention in D.C., where he declared a crime emergency August 11th and sent nearly 2,200 National Guard troops alongside a surge of federal law enforcement agents. Even as Trump this week softened his language about activating the Guard over the objections of local officials elsewhere, the president continued to stress the need for crime reduction in Baltimore. "The people in Baltimore, the people in all the places we talk about, they want to see us there. And I think we're pretty much waiting until we get asked," Trump said. At the news conference Friday, Moore said the focus on enhancing public safety doesn't have anything to do with Trump. "Nothing we're doing is inspired by the president. The president does not inspire us." Scott led the crowd in a chant. "We're all we got," the mayor yelled. The crowd hollered back, "We're all we need." Maryland State Police troopers and officers from the Maryland Transportation Authority will do proactive enforcement in high-risk areas that will create a highly visible law enforcement presence, the governor's office said in a news release. The extra officers will also assist on investigations of firearm and narcotics offenses. Scott and Moore have refused to endorse using the Guard and conferred with State Attorney General Anthony G. Brown, Democrat, on a legal game plan to stop it should Trump do it anyway. Meanwhile, they have publicly welcomed more agents from the FBI and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, as well as enhanced federal funding for local police, suggesting that the president support a federal ban of ghost guns and devices that give some guns rapid-fire capability. "I have a whole list of federal resources that I would love for the President of the United States to be able to authorize," Moore said this week during a public appearance at the National Press Club in D.C., but calling up the Maryland National Guard is not one of them. 100% I would not accept it, and there's no need for it, Moore said, pointing out that the Guard has not been deployed in D.C. to help local policing. "These are people with other jobs. These are people who still have their families relying on them, who now are being asked to come to Washington, D.C. to rake mulch and clean up trash and help people with their luggage when they arrive at Union Station," he said. "And do you know why? Because they're not trained to do municipal policing. Do you know who is trained? Local law enforcement, FBI, and ATF agents. Under the targeted surge plan, Maryland State Police troopers will be sent to state-owned routes within Baltimore city limits, where they already have jurisdiction, allowing Baltimore Police Department officers to patrol elsewhere. The plan, which reactivates initiatives scaled back under then-Gov Larry Hogan, Republican, also enhances a joint task force whose job is to track down people with warrants for their arrest. This is about getting the right resources to the right locations, and it's just good policing," said Adam Flash, Moore's deputy chief of staff and a retired brigadier general who is helping lead the governor's response to a potential National Guard deployment. "We're not going to be done in a month and declare victory and walk away," he said in an interview Friday, adding that the surge ensures constitutional policing that leads to prosecutable arrests, which in turn puts people into Maryland's criminal justice system and its rehabilitation programs. "That's the difference in this approach. It's not just smash-mouth law enforcement of yesteryear," Flash said. Scott referenced the stop-and-frisk policies that were pervasive in Baltimore during the 1990s, noting that those huge numbers of arrests still came alongside high homicide rates. "Our focus is on removing the right people from the streets of Baltimore," Scott said during a public appearance earlier in the week, the same day about 75 residents rallied against a possible Guard deployment in front of Baltimore City Hall. We have to understand the moment that we're in right now, and that we have to be very careful that we don't give them what they want, he said, referring to Trump and his supporters. It seems they want chaos. It seems that they want certain communities and certain types of people, especially people that look like me, to be easily depicted as violent or born criminals, so to speak. On Tuesday, in talking about the need to go into Baltimore, Trump said some of the people arrested in D.C. were born to be criminals and could not be rehabilitated. Baltimore residents have responded to the president's comments with a mix of outrage, frustration, hope, and resignation. Before Friday's announcement, residents in various parts of the city appeared to be bracing for a National Guard deployment. At the City Hall protest organized by Baltimore's branch of the Party for Socialism and Liberation, demonstrators carried signs reading "No military on our streets" and "End authoritarian America." They stopped at the large government plaza outside ICE's Baltimore field office. The world that they want to build is one where we are afraid of our own neighbors and co-workers, Clara Hessler, one of the event's organizers, shouted into a microphone. But we know the danger to our city is in the White House, it's on Wall Street, and it's in City Hall. The next day, in Highlandtown, a heavily Latino neighborhood in southeast Baltimore, small business owners stood outside their storefronts on Eastern Avenue and exchanged warm greetings in Spanish. 3 men leaned against the glass windows of a barber shop. If the National Guard comes to town, it will not be well seen by the Latino community, Edward Martinez, a barber at the shop, said in Spanish. It's a situation that generates a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety, said Martinez, 44, who emigrated 2 years ago from Colombia. It will not be good to send the Guard to this city. Down the block, William Winder, a longtime city trash collector, lounged by a railing in front of a Bank of America. The 61-year-old in a neon yellow work shirt greeted everyone passing by, some by name, as if he were the unofficial mayor of Eastern Avenue. His opinion all depends on the National Guard's intentions in the city, he said. We want them to come over here with love, Winder said. Don't bring no guns. You said you coming to be the big bad guy. We don't need a big bad guy. We need somebody that's showing love and appreciation and showing things being done that's building, not tearing down. Across town on a packed city bus, Giselle Jones, 67, a lifelong Baltimore resident, squeezed through a throng of passengers to reach a special needs seat. She was open to the idea of a National Guard deployment. I think it might help, Jones said. We have to stop killing each other. The police don't seem to be doing very much. The white and purple bus bounced past small churches, dollar stores, neon signs, and the mid-demolition Pimlico racecourse in the same Park Heights neighborhood where the mayor and governor would later hold their public safety walk. They need something, Nick Thomas, 67, said at a bus stop near a row of dilapidated homes, expressing a similar openness to a new approach to combating crime. He said the city's police aren't cracking down on violence in a holistic sense. He said immigrants are taking many of the well-paying jobs while residents like him struggle to cobble together a living. Republicans, you might not like it, but Republicans get something done, he said. Wayne Perry, 40, was more skeptical. Standing in the bus's aisle, he said the systemic issues that often lead to violence require a more comprehensive solution than simply deploying more law enforcement. The poverty epidemic, it won't stop. The heroin epidemic won't stop. You see how he looks at Baltimore, Perry said of the president, whom he started to imitate. Why would I come? There's 100 rats there. Perry said that if Trump were to come see Baltimore for himself, in all its complexity, he would view the presence of federal troops in the city differently. But the president sending in the shooters to fix the problems he perceives but hasn't experienced feels like a weak effort, Perry said. We're already, as you say, the underdog city. You just made us growl a little bit more harder, he said. It's hard to imagine federal troops lining streets full of the smoke shops, chicken shacks, and cracked steps leading up to sinking houses that characterize some of these West Baltimore neighborhoods, which are often forgotten, Perry said. Bus riders around him nodded as Perry predicted that any federal troops would patrol more visible and recognizable parts of Baltimore, like Fells Point and other affluent communities along the water. You know what they're saying about us? He said. They gonna kill anyway.